What's going on, guys? I know it's been a minute. My bad. I completely fell off of my recording schedule, which is what I was trying not to do, but it's for good reason. A few months ago, I had a few pretty big things happen to me that just, you know, I just had to, you know, hit like a personal reset and, gather myself back and before I could keep myself going. So I'm, kind of doing better. It's still a work in progress, and I'll get into that, you know, eventually. But I kind of want to address a bigger issue. As you can see, I'm wearing my quality leering hoodie that was produced by Nick Shirley after the Minnesota fraud went public and became a national issue, just like California now is, and now even Ohio, as far as the $1.1 trillion in PPP loan fraud is concerned. See, that's more or less what I've been focused on, recently, is just all this, everything that's being uncovered under the current administration, which I'm not really trying to get too political with this because, as far as I'm concerned with my own politics, I just, I stay out of it. I just hear about what I hear about, look into it, follow up. I do my own research and everything. Obviously, I don't believe everything that I hear because nothing's believable anymore, which is, kind of my whole issue. It's funny because, now that all this fraud is being uncovered, it drives me crazy, but at the same time, it also makes everything clear because, from like much of the last decade or so, I've been told about, get a job, make money, so that you can afford a car and your own house and your own lifestyle, and you can travel and do this and do, whatever you want to do as long as you're making money. And the issue is, with my generation, the generations behind me, is, we played by the rules. We went to school, or we went through school, graduated, went back into school for, whatever major we decided to take. And, the whole time we're in school, we're being told, oh, get the degree, your life will be better, or whatever. And, obviously, the statistics do dictate that when you have a degree, you are that much more successful than those without the degree. But still, even back then, it was, I got out of school. I had 6 months to find myself a decent job and start paying my school loans back, which is an endeavor all its own. But, like, my point is, we were already in the thick of it back then. And now, especially today, like, I'm working full time. I'm not doing a job that I want to do for the rest of my life, which, who is? I get that, don't worry, I'm not making that argument, but I'm trying to find a part-time job just to add to the income that I already have coming in, and I can't even do that right now. And I've applied to places that I've previously worked for that, are, pretty much in, good standing. Not that I'm not in good standing, but, there's, I have, there's places that I, left with issues that probably don't want to hire me again, and that's understandable. But, like, I don't create an issue where one already hasn't been presented, just, to be fair. But the bottom line is, everybody from every generation right now is working at least a job and a half, if not two jobs, trying to make their life work out. And, I know 70 and 80-year-olds that are in the same boat. I know 50-year-olds that are in the same boat. I know 20 and 30-year-olds that are in the same boat. And it just, it kills me because from what I'm hearing, we probably wouldn't even need all of that if we weren't being lied to and stolen from the entire time. And you can, you know, you can use whatever argument you want, take whatever angle you want to take, do all the math and finger pointing and name calling and all that, do all of it that you want to do, but in the end, in my opinion, at the end of the day, is my point is, bottom line, the people who are in charge of all this, trying to make it work for all of us and trying to make things better for everybody, they're either directly involved or indirectly benefiting. And whether they know or not is not the argument, that is not the point that I'm trying to make right now. What I'm saying is the entire system, regardless of who's in charge, who's in what office right now, who made this policy and now they took this policy away, regardless of all that nuance right now, the bottom line is the system is ruined because the people running the system are not doing the right thing. And to be fair as I can be, I'm talking about both sides. I personally don't take a side. I listen to both sides, and honestly, whoever's making the most sense, I go with that because that's all that I have to go by. But if it doesn't make sense or it's not working out for the better, then I gotta call it what it is. And that's the thing. I can call it what it is because at the end of the day, my perspective is grounded in reality. And that's the biggest issue with the whole thing. It isn't. There is a Democrat Party and a Republican Party, but the main issue has nothing to do with that. Because both of those parties ideally should be working for us to make everything better. That's exactly what's not happening because, yes, there are liars on the Republican side. Don't get me wrong, that side is corrupt as well. But the blatant guys, the guys who just don't seem to get it and can't get it through their head that the way they're doing things is not good, right, is the Democrats. I'm not going to say the left, I'm going to say the radical left, because that's also my issue. We're hearing nothing but craziness and delusion from the radicals of the left. We're not hearing from the most radical. I mean, we technically already heard them. They're all, they've all got rainbow hair and, don't have a basic idea of how gender works, but that's another story. I digress because I'm not trying to go there right now. What I'm trying to say is even the least extreme are not being platformed at all. The extremists are all being platformed because honestly, how do you defend calling a policy racist when it doesn't include terminology that specifies a specific race, that literally defies logic and makes absolutely no sense? We're too, as a society, and maybe this is just mass media, it's the way they spin it. I don't want to put words in people's mouths because mass media is behind most of this lunacy, and nobody and everybody's calling it out, but nobody's doing it. Well, most people aren't doing anything about it, but that's the issue. Mass media is so focused on pushing this racial bias and gender bias thing, and I'm talking about male versus female. I'm not talking about anything else other than that right now. And it's that alone is destabilizing us, because even if we're not doing the race thing and the the sex thing, we're still doing the I'm man, you're woman, who's more superior, which at the end of the day, if you can't understand by now that we're we are equal, the only way that we make things work is if we're equal. But yes, women carry life, but men have to create life for the woman to carry, for that argument to even make sense too. But I'm not even going there, because that's not even an argument that I can make, because that's not a part of my life. That's not in my life. So I won't even go there either. But and this is all the walking on eggshells and the tiptoeing that you have to do, because every other group or party wants to be offended by, oh, this take and that take. And I'm just trying to come at it like a human being, saying, listen, I look at it this way, I look at it that way. And it's honestly not as complicated as people want to think or trying to make it. And that's my whole issue. If we can't even get past that part, then, there's no point to argue fraud, racism, sexism. I'll throw in gender ideology, because that entered the chat at the beginning of the last decade. So it's just like I honestly, I've been so quiet just because, other than dealing with my own stuff, I'm trying to make sense of all the craziness going on all over the country and dealing with all this. And honestly, like, at least when we talk money, that affects everybody regardless of everything else. Because then when we get into race, we get into gender, we get into sexism, get into religion and culture. It gets it gets it gets complicated, which it's going to, because because that's how it is. Everybody has something to say about everybody else, and the issue is that people can't always take it, whatever everybody. Some people are more sensitive than others. That's the issue. But the thing is, these differences and these you know instabilities between cultures, that's part of it. That's the reality of it. Not everybody is going to agree or look at it the same way, and those are the real boundaries and guidelines that we need to be addressing. Because if if the if the religious animal if the religious animal killers of the world are going to be allowed to practice their religion peacefully in private, then the Christians, Catholics, Jews, and Muslims, or whoever, need to take their business elsewhere and ignore what they're not directly involved in, because that's got nothing to do with you. That's the part that people have an issue with. You might be offended by it, you might disagree with it, you might be totally sickened by it, but if that's their culture, you can't do anything or say anything about that. That's their business. That's the issue that people have. That's the border that we need to figure out before the boundary that we need to figure out if we're going to make any kind of progress moving forward. And that's really all that I have to say about that right now. So, shout out Nick Shirley for making a difference, and long live independent journalism, because the rest of you guys ain't cutting it anymore.